welcome to the Street Spotlight stage. So here we have Nicky Clarke, who's going to go through everything about his hairdressing career, who he's worked with, and just to give you guys an idea of how you can get into the industry yourself. So where did it all begin? Who inspired you? What made you decide to go down the path of hairdressing?
Hi everyone. Hopefully the idea of the next 5 or 10 minutes is really just to kind of give you some sort of insight into the world of hairdressing, and certainly the world that I sort of chose all those years ago. So it's kind of appropriate to start way back in the 70s when I was a 17-year-old and not really having any of the kind of information that we're seeing today with this kind of huge accessibility of all of these different career options. I took on hairdressing, which seemed at that point, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know that this was such a diverse career. To me, it was just about hairdressing salons and going and doing people's hair, which of course actually, what it is now is it's just such a much larger industry, where you have salons, you also have, teams that are doing show work and educational work all around the world. You have the people that are involved in magazines and people that are involved in doing fashion shows, people involved in film, people involved in the theatre, the theatrical side of hairdressing in terms of the wigs and the period dramas and things like that. And so it has this huge diverse side of it that isn't just about necessarily going and working in a salon. The irony of course, is that that's partly my favourite bit, of which I still do a lot of. So I'm still doing that sort of, 3-4 days a week all the time. So there is an element that I love that is about just working with people, but it is a very, very big industry.
So now, obviously, we've got people at college, universities doing different courses. How would you say is the best way to approach it? Would you go to a salon and learn? Would you go to college and get your skills? How would you go about getting into the industry?
Well, I think it's a very individual choice. I mean, there is certainly the case for being at colleges where they offer foundation courses, and sometimes people don't necessarily know what aspect of the beauty industry they might want to be in. And I think sometimes there has to be something to say for those people that will give you a taster of all of those things. For me personally, it was about not going to college because that wasn't really offered to me then. And I was just told, and I think probably at that time it was probably the best advice, which was to just go to what I thought was a really good salon, a salon that I like to be at, and just start at the bottom. And I'd be sweeping the floor and polishing the brass and working very, very long hours for £12 a week. And but loving it, to be quite frank. And I think that that's the difference. You've really got to be interested in something. And I think if you do that, it doesn't become your laborious career choice. It just becomes you doing something that you love.
So who inspired you to get into this?
I don't know if anybody really inspired me as such. I mean, I wanted to do something in the world of fashion, and certainly hair seemed to be a slightly interesting aspect. And of course, when I started in the 70s, I mean, it was a very, very diverse period. I mean, anybody that knows their history, certainly from the music industry, this was a very, very interesting decade. You had some real game changers going on. We had the start of 1970 with some very kind of sort of boring West Coast music, then coming into, glam rock in the early 70s of 72, going all the way through the middle of the 70s with both punk and disco, and then moving into new wave, with bands that were very interesting. Then, of course, the New Romantics in 1979, 1980. So you had this decade that was quite flamboyant where hair was concerned, and certainly for men as well. And I think that's probably what kind of interested me in doing something of that nature. Whether it took me into fashion, I didn't know at the time, but actually, of course, that's what it did.
So which one of those was your favourite? What did you really, really enjoy doing?
I think the thing is that you get to a point where you just enjoy creating something. This industry gives you the opportunity to be able to take something at this stage and turn it into something great at that stage in a relatively short space of time. So of course, it's all about you, really. You're not necessarily having to do things with huge teams, although that does come into it sometimes as well. But it's very much about your thing. And I think that's what appeals to a lot of people. But I think it's still about trying to find your own niche. For every hairdresser that wants to be a job-in hairdresser or a consumer hairdresser or a commercial hairdresser, there's another one that just really wants to be on their own planet and do avant-garde creations. And there is a place for all of that.
So how did you branch out into all of these things? Because you've worked with magazines, you've done loads of different things with different celebrities, different ideas. How did you decide to just branch out and go for it, making that step?
Well, I think I was very fortunate because where I worked, we did a lot of magazine work at that time. And so I was the assistant of various people that were very prominent in that field. And I think I got to meet a lot of the young assistant photographers, and there'd be makeup artists that really were trying to get their work exposed. And so we would really just do what we call test shoots. And it's really where everybody gives their time and energy freely. Nobody's getting anything out of it other than the experience of working. So I mean, I produced at that time huge amounts of work and huge amounts of stuff that was just literally, friends and photographers and stuff like that. And that stuff actually that even now is almost easier to do because you've only got to go online and there are a ton of people that all go, I just want to do pictures. I'm a makeup artist. I'm a stylist. I'm a hairdresser. I'm a photographer. And yet, of course, we've even got our own the energy now that comes even from mobile phones and Instagram that you can create your own stuff as well. So, if anything, it should be easier now.
So really, that's the best way to go about it. Just keep doing your test shoots and really just pushing your work out there.
If you want to try and get to a point where you want to know what you want to do and how you want to express yourself, then you really need to be you need to be interested. You need to be looking at magazines, looking at things, knowing what you like and what you don't like. And I think that's kind of important. Whether or not you necessarily do shoots, that's only going to be really good if you want to be that creative. It may well be that you don't necessarily. But I think that certainly as an exercise, it kind of gets you to know how hair works and know how you can create a total image as well.
That's really interesting to hear because obviously a lot of people don't know how to start these things and don't know how to push themselves into that. So what do you see your future? Are you still going to carry on doing bits more in the salon? Would you like to do more high-profile celebrity things? How do you feel like you're going to shape that?
I think the thing is for us as a company, I mean, Nicky Clarke has now become a brand. So, there are the electricals with hairdryers, there's the wet products, there are the educational side of things, there are the salons, there's film work, there's all that other stuff that we do. And I think that can only be done as part of a machine that has been going now for the last 40 years. So I think we wanted to be in a direction that covered a lot of different things. And that's not necessarily for everybody, but for me it was, I get bored easily. So it was just like, oh, let's do this. Oh, well, why don't we do that? It was that kind of thing. So, and I love that. And I think the staff that we have, I think appreciate the fact that we have a lot of tentacles out there doing lots and lots of different things. And I think we are different things to different people. For every person that goes, oh, that's that person on TV, there's another one that goes, oh, that's the one I've got his hairdryer or whatever. So, and that's great. It is great. But that's all part and parcel of our industry. And it's part of the brand that we've created.
So what do you look for in somebody that wants to be a hairdresser and is coming to you for advice? What do you need to see in them to see if they have the potential?
I think in terms of if you want to be in the hairdressing industry, you first of all need to have stamina. That's probably the first thing. There is an energy there that requires the physical side of actually working hard. But I don't believe that that's a bad thing if you love what you do. I think if you really love what you do, then it isn't really, that hard. But certainly the idea of, putting in the hours and putting the kind of the time and energy in it is a must. That's the first thing. I think the second thing has to be that you've got to be interested in hair. You've got to be interested in the beauty industry. What you need to find out is what direction you want to take that in. And there are lots of directions that you can choose, and they all are good in their own way. But I think that's really where people need to kind of focus on.
Would you say it's more useful nowadays to have more skills on your side, like makeup, like photography, and possibly like different things like that to add into your portfolio, or would you just go down the hair route?
No, that's a very difficult one to answer because as a hairdresser, I want to be able to specialize.
Yeah.
However, when I take my if I put my editorial hat on, and as a magazine hairdresser, when I was doing that, there was a time when to do certain aspects, you needed to be a makeup artist that did a bit of hair or a hairdresser that did a bit of makeup, because certain jobs required the budgets to have one person. So there was a real change about 20 odd years ago when suddenly people, especially if you're shooting on a beach or you're shooting somewhere outdoors, you don't necessarily need to have the best at one or the other. You need them to be quite good at both. So I'm almost contradicting myself in the sense that I like the fact that somebody specializes and is professional. However, as needs must sometimes, if you're going to be a session hairdresser and you're out there, it's probably a good idea to do a bit of both. And you could even say, if you look at, say, for instance, some of the images that people would know. If you take the Tony and Guy images, for instance, Anthony Mascolo, who is a great hairdresser, takes all those pictures. So he's also a great photographer. So he's using that aspect of control in being able to, create the images that he wants rather than having to tell somebody else how to do it. So I think in the end, it's great to do lots and lots of different things that add to your grounding foundation skills. However, there is a point. If you want to be great at something, you're going to have to focus on one and excel at that rather than be okay, good at lots of things.
Yeah. Do we have any questions at all in the audience? Is there anyone that anybody wants to go back over or ask?
Come on, don't sit there. Any burning questions about the world of hairdressing? Go.
Nicky, I just want to ask you, who cuts your hair? Do you cut your own?
Probably looks like I cut my own, I know. No, actually, Kelly, my girlfriend, who happens to be, who works in the salon most of the time. She still works in the salon, but she's actually a fashion designer now, but she does it. It's a lot easier to do it when I go, I've only got 5 minutes, do it now.
Do we have any more questions at all?
Okay.
What part of hairdressing did you find the most challenging while as a young hairdresser?
So the last part of it, the most challenging?
Most challenging part of hairdressing while you were younger?
I don't know if that is an interesting question, but I'm not sure that I would. I think the thing that drives me is always vanity. So I don't want to look like an idiot. So, I do my research quite well. If I know that I've got to be doing something that is fractionally out of my comfort zone, then I'm going to research it heavily. I think the thing is, I suppose it goes back to what I said before about specializing. And I could even bring that back to specializing within specializing. For hairdressing itself, for instance, there are, say, runway hairdressers, fashion show hairdressers that are probably not the best commercial hairdressers because their brain doesn't think in that way. They think in a different part. So they're going to think better than I am about that. So if I'm doing a show, very often I have to kind of get myself into that mode and I have to think fashion show mode. I can't think practical mode, which is the commercial side of things. So I suppose really it's not that I find it challenging. I would definitely want to do my research. And, if I'm doing a film or something like that, I want to know my reference points. I have a huge backlog of all these kind of reference points. And I have a knowledge of stuff that I'll never use probably. I would be the teenager sitting there doing pin curls anti-clockwise and clockwise because one day I might need to do some kind of old school Hollywood hair or something. So I'd want to be ready for that. So I try and keep myself as ready as possible for any eventuality. But I don't think there's anything that I find as challenging, rather than I find it interesting. Good question.
Thank you so much for being here with us today.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure. If
You're welcome.
anybody does have any more questions, we'll be around for a couple of minutes. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you.